Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today I am joined here at San Diego Historical Games Convention with Morgane Gouyon-Rety, who is a designer of Hubris, which is an upcoming game, and Pendragon, which you know a lot more than you do Hubris. But we're going to talk about both games today. Morgane, thanks a lot for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And let's talk about, well, first we'll talk about Hubris because that's the next game in the docket, and then we'll circle back and we'll talk a little bit about Pendragon. So Hubris, tell everybody what that game is about.
Right, so Hubris is actually a project of mine which started more than 6.5 years ago in 2013, before Pendragon. And then it has gone through a number of iterations, and obviously there's a before Pendragon and an after Pendragon in Hubris. Basically, the game is also about what I call a hinge period of history, which is a time when we change paradigm. So it's the back end of the Hellenistic kingdoms, which are the successor kingdoms to Alexander the Great. And so we start with these kingdoms, the Ptolemies, the Seleucids, Macedon, very strongly and you know, really fighting against each other for supremacy in the Eastern Med. And at the end of the period, historically at least, Rome was dominant and had crushed two of these kingdoms and basically vassalized the third. So it's this complete shift, just like you have in Pendragon, going from the Roman Empire to these barbarian kingdoms, that you also find in a very different context, in a very different way. But I believe, I really love this period where you know, paradigms shift.
Yeah.
So Hubris is basically you are a kingdom, so you are a dynasty of kings. If you play the full campaign, you're going to play roughly 75 years of history. But there will be a lot of shorter scenarios, obviously, 5 years to a turn. And the game revolves around the leaders. So you are the king at that moment, and with his entourage, his court, family members, ministers, trusted or less trusted friends, etc. And this is the engine of the game. In order to do anything, you need to activate a character, the king or a friend or a general. And they are all rated, a little bit like in RPGs in a way, so they have their numbers, and you test whether they're successful or not. So in essence, it's a game of managing what resources you have in terms of, okay, who do you have in my court, who can I trust, who is effective at doing what I need at this particular point in time.
So we were talking yesterday, you were showing me about how you've got that line, that big chart that you can, if you don't want to play the campaign game, you can just kind of pull a segment of history out, like 5 years, like you're saying, and you'll have your end win conditions listed out depending on how many years you want to play.
So this is correct. So basically you can play 17 turns at the maximum. And when I designed the game to calibrate it, I basically tracked what I would say is the historical performance of each of the kingdoms in game terms. So translating that into victory points. And so that gave me a baseline which allowed me obviously to calibrate what should be automatic victory conditions and so on. But then I figured I could use that to determine a turn by turn, at the end of each turn, what would be, you know, a winning performance or not, based obviously on history and my assessment of whether they were outperforming or underperforming.
Sure.
So that means that for every given turn, you have a target for each of the kingdoms, so that you could stop at any time. There will be a number of start points with setups, so you could start at probably something like 10 different starting points. And if you want to play 2 turns, or if you want to play 6 turns, it doesn't matter. There will be suggestions, I mean, obviously depending on starting point, but you say what, you're running out of time, you have to stop, you go to the end of the turn, you check the values, and you know who has the best victory margin.
Now, everyone wants solitaire in their games. And you're saying that this is a 3-player game.
It's a 3-player game.
But you're talking about actually coming up with a solo system as well.
Yeah.
Now, so what kind of challenges has that introduced for you?
To be honest with you, this is still very, very preliminary. I'm focusing on having the core mechanism in place, which is, I think, the case today. Then working on the scenarios, balancing all the specific leaders, because every leader is unique, and it adds a lot of narrative and flavor to the game. I already have some kind of a, not solitaire, but bot, you might say, system, because Rome is not a playable faction.
Okay.
So Rome is managed by other means. I already have drafted some rules if you play with only 2 players, because that's a fairly common occurrence. I have a couple ideas. I like what has been done for Arjuna, for Gandhi.
Yes.
I'm definitely looking to have everything card-driven because I think it's much more user-friendly than to go through charts and But beyond that, to be honest with you, not much. It's much easier to have Rome being handled by bots, but still you have players who can provide some input. And there's actually not a bidding mechanism, but you can influence Rome so that when the time comes, you are the one making the final decision within the guidelines. But when you have only one player, that doesn't work. So that's still in the future of development.
Now, it's a 3-player game. How does it change? How does the dynamics of the games, how do they change in a 2-player game?
So essentially, you got the two main powers at the time were the Seleucids, so in Syria and Iraq today, we would say, and the Ptolemies in Egypt. So these would be the 2 players you would keep in a 2-player game.
Okay.
These 2 players fought just during the span of the game for something like 8 major wars. So they would definitely be the main engine. Macedon is a bit different. They are dealing with the Greeks, they're dealing with Rome before anyone else deals with Rome. So I'm not going to say they are a second-rate power because they are not. They can still do a lot of things and create a lot of mischief, but it's a bit different. So that would be the first power that would not be played if we go to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now let's kind of circle back like we were talking about before. Pendragon. Hubris started before Pendragon, but Pendragon was completed, published before Hubris.
Exactly.
Now, what did you learn, now that I know that, what did you learn from your initial design of Hubris that you incorporated in Pendragon? What did you learn from Pendragon that you're incorporating into Hubris?
Well, one of the big things I learned, I think, is that you have to go with your guts. And that's something Volko actually taught me. It's really a matter of, you tend to sort of sometimes self-censor yourself. It's like, I want to do this, but maybe not. And then at some point it came back. And there's at least a couple instances in the development of Pendragon where actually I had something in my notes which I had not used, and then I went back to it in the course of development. So
important to keep your notes, guys.
I've got always a big notebook, and I keep everything. I keep absolutely everything. So with Hubris, I had a first iteration of the game, which was working pretty fine, was fairly advanced in development, had a lot of playtesting done, and then I put it on the side to do Pendragon. And then I went back to Hubris, and I was like, the game is nearly ready. It should be fairly quick. And then I went back to my sources, and I went back and I was like, you know what? I think that the focus is not quite where I would actually want it to. And so obviously a small change become big changes, and I completely tilted the axis of the game. But again, go with your guts. It cost me like 2 years in development, you might say. And it's not entirely true because other things happened but in my life. But I like the new game. I like the old game a lot. I love this one.
Well, there's an evolution there because of, like you said, follow your gut. Volko said, do that. And I can see what you're saying about the self-censoring. You kind of like doubt yourself. I want to go this way, and now maybe it's not going to work. And then like Volko said, explore it. You never know. You either run into it at dead end or you come up with a new development. So
the other aspect that I got from the development of Pendragon, and I, for one, do not think that the coin games are particularly complex games. They are rich, there's a lot of interactions, but the core rule set is not that complex.
No.
But still, even though many players are still, there's a lot to absorb and a lot of things to learn, the subtleties and stuff. So I set myself that target with Hubris, that I would keep the basic rule set as simple and intuitive, as straightforward as possible, and then the wealth of interaction and complexity would be in the game itself. I use for that, Holland Spieler, obviously very different type of game, but what I love about them is that you can just come and punch the piece, and it takes you maybe 30, 45 minutes to read the rules, and you can start playing. This has real value, and I would like that Hubris could be a bit like that. It wouldn't take too long for someone to, jump in the pool. to do competent and proficient and master all the subtleties, no, obviously.
Easy to
That
learn,
takes
long
some
time to master, yeah.
But that's my design goal. So I sort of try to stick to that, and it has to be intuitive. And part of that was actually having some great mechanism that had been developed before, which I thought, but extremely clever, and I was very proud of myself. And then I was like, yeah, but it doesn't fit with the general approach of the rest of the game. Sorry.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do this.
But you can keep it in your notes and use it in another game.
I still have that in my notes, definitely.
That's why it's important to have those notes. Yes. So you're out there with your,
But I try to keep, so basically when you play Hubris, whether you're doing the different kind of action, whether they all follow the same logic.
Sure.
So you activate someone, you check his rating, you tell your successes, and you apply. And it's true for everything in the game. Which hopefully, based on the first feedback from the test, this is the new iteration's first go with, new players, people who have never seen the game before. I think that obviously the first turn I have to sort of guide them a little bit, and then it goes. So it seems like it's not too far from the target.
Well, that's good. Well, and as far as coin, are you looking at maybe possibly revisiting the coin system in the future?
Most definitely, yes.
Really?
I got a couple
of ideas. Same time frame, or?
I've got one idea which is actually set, maybe let's say 50, 60 years before the timeline of Hubris.
Okay.
Where I'm looking at the faction in one particular city, Athens, during the time of the king. So basically you are trying to maintain control or gain control of the city politics in the midst of a wider conflicts of people who have a lot more power than you do.
Yeah.
And so you have to make the right bets and play the right cards at the same time. So I'm aiming to have a very, quick playing coin game centering on city factions politics. In that context. And then I got another one in a completely different time period, which is kind of linked to where I live today, which is in Montreal, Quebec. So I'm probably looking at something which would come like before, in a way, before Liberty or Death. Looking at the whole struggle between, the British and the Americans and the French and the Indians. But going all the way back to probably 1700 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
But that's still very, very,
it's in the Genesis stage. Yeah. Well, that'd be great. And what is the latest on Hubris as far as moving into production?
Okay, so as I said, there was a major redesign and streamlining which took place over the last year, really. This has come to a point which I like. Right now the game is fun, works fine, and goes at the right pace because it has to go fast enough to depict the broad tapestry, the grand tapestry of events over a long period, and it seems to be achieving that. So now it's a lot of fine-tuning, small parameters, individual leaders, individual scenarios set up. I had one scenario which I was hoping to test here, and I was testing it solo before coming, and I was like, okay, no, it's not ready.
Not ready for prime time.
Not ready for prime time yet. But I'm fairly confident with the core mechanisms of the game, which are the most important thing, and which are entirely new, unlike Pendragon. So now it's a matter of fine tuning and developing the various scenarios. So we're probably talking of a number of months, I guess, before it goes. But who knows? Maybe P500 next year.
Maybe P500 in 2020. That would be fantastic.
Great, yeah.
Well, Morgan, I really appreciate you taking the time here and sitting down and chat with us.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to talk about my games.
Yeah, no, I love it. And Pendragon is available still from GMT. Yep. Hubris hopefully will be on the P500 in 2020. So if you're interested in either one of those games, go to GMT Games to check them out. Thanks a lot, Morgan. I really appreciate it.
See you soon.
Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
Bye.